YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and welcome back to the Outsiders channel, and today we are doing the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition review. And we are basing our review off the PDF that I've downloaded, the 110 pages here. Here's the document, ring-binded kindly for me by Orchard Print. And I am going to be picking out of this book the things that interest me the most, and the things I want to share with you that I think are well worth revealing in a video. This is not an in-depth break-it-down guide of everything that exists within this PDF, but it is the things that I think are the most interesting parts to it and give us good clues as to what's going to come out in the Player's Handbook and the DMG. So let's get into it. We've got a lot of ground to cover and let's see where this goes. One is all about creating a character. Now there are 3 methods given, but I'm just going to focus really on one of them, but I will quickly go over the other 2. The other 2 methods are as follows. You have a stat array, which is 15, 14, 13, 12, 10 and 8, and you'll arrange them how you want on your character sheet. Obviously that doesn't reflect any racial modifications, etc. And then you have a 4d6 method. Take the best 3 out of 4 dice rolled and do that 6 times and arrange how you want. And then the final method is a point buy method, which is modelled off 27 points on their table, which you'll find if you're following along in your PDF is on page 9. And the maximum that you can actually buy is a 15 and it costs 9 points. As Dungeon Master Johnny said, this is brutal. I love it. So that's the reason I'm highlighting it here. 3 methods, very, very good. I personally like the variation table that they've got. I think that's really interesting. And of course you can modify it through your racial abilities, and stats do improve with the characters as they go up levels. So that's the focus I'm giving you in chapter 1. Let's move into chapter 2, and I'm going to cover off some things that I saw in there that were very interesting as well. Now, there are 2 things in the races chapter that interest me to discuss here for this video, and that is, the first one is under the elf section on page 15, Darkness of the Drow. Now, at no point are dark elves mentioned except here, and it does go on to talk about the famous one, which is Drizzt Do'Urden and the Ranger of the North. So for anybody that's a Forgotten Realms buff will know who he is. But that may indicate or may give a clue that in the Player's Handbook or the DMG, and I suspect the DMG, there may be an option to actually play Drow and follow in his footsteps. So that interested me, and that's why I mentioned it here. And the other thing is that most of the human races that are mentioned, there's quite a few mentioned, but they're all very similar. There's not a lot of difference between them. But there is a variant human trait that you can use, and that does the following. It says this: if your campaign uses the optional feat rules from the Player's Handbook, so that's quite interesting, feats are mentioned, your Dungeon Master might allow you to use the variant trait rules, which replace the human ability score increases. Ability score increase. When you get one, 2 different ability scores of your choice increase by 1 rather than normally +2. So one ability normally increases by +2. So the human has more flexibility this way. You gain 1 proficiency of your choice as a skill, and you gain 1 feat of your choice. Now that really does open up the humans to be more interesting depending on where they come from. So I think that's going to be a very good rule to actually use, and that's again why I mention it here. It's the 2 most interesting things that come out of the races section of the book. Let's go and have a look at the 3rd section now, and that's all about classes. Okay, let's look at classes and start with a couple of things that you'll find on the very first page of this particular section, page 20. Clerics now only receive simple weapons, and I think that that will change depending on what deities are available to worship. Will give them a bonus weapon. Otherwise, we at this moment in time do not see some of the classic cleric weapons. And rogues now have access straight away to longswords beyond the simple weapon list. So that's quite an interesting set of changes. We also notice that each class gets something every level. And I talked to you before in my previous video about how I believe multi-classing is a definite possibility in this one. Well, when you consider features like Second Wind the Fighter gets at 1st level, which is on his turn he can use a bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d10 plus his fight level. He can use this once until he has actually had a short rest or a long rest, and we'll talk about that in a later chapter, but that alone is quite interesting for low levels. And at 2nd level gets Action Surge, so he can push himself beyond his normal limits for a moment. On his turn he can take 1 additional action on top of his regular actions and a possible bonus action for that turn. So again, massive implications for multi-classing. And we see the same thing again when we turn and look at the Rogue, who gets Uncanny Dodge at 5th level, which can be used against an oncoming attack. You can use your reaction, which is basically an interrupt, to halve the damage dealt to you against that attack that you see coming. That's really nice. And you gain evasion at 7th level, which is used against things like breath weapon. If you fail your save, you only take half damage, and if you make it, you take none. So that tells you the flexibility that's going to be there for multi-classing, and that's without really exploring any of the other options. We then turn our features to the wizard momentarily. Preparing and casting spells has massively changed. You prepare a list of spells that are available for you to cast. To do so, you choose a number of wizard spells from your spellbook equal to your intelligence modifier plus your wizard level. So, for example, let's say you had intelligence 16, which gives you +3 in your first level. You've actually got 4 first level spells that you can prepare. Or if you were a third level wizard who has a third level wizard and had the same modifier, let's call it +3, you'd have 6 spells that you can prepare. It can be first or second level from your spellbook. That's the interesting change. So first or second level, 6 of them that you can prepare. You can change your list of prepared spells when you take a long rest. And the other thing I noticed is that the saving throws for spells are lower, but your chances of actually saving them are harder. That's going to be difficult to quantify in this video, so you just have to go with me on this. But just to give you an example, if you had a wizard who had, let's take what we've already said, the spell saves a DC 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. So your proficiency bonus is normally something like +2, and your modifier might be +3. So your DCs are 13, maybe 14. So you can get an idea they're a lot lower, but your actual chances of saving your C are a lot lower as well. So I thought I'd mention that here. The final thing to talk about is a big section this on classes, is spellbooks. Nice interesting section, quite costly to put spellbooks into, new spells into your spellbook. There isn't any rules at the moment in here about how many pages it uses, but that's very easy to come up with your own one. But it is costly. First level spell going in is 50 gold, second level is 200, third level is 150, and so on. So very expensive stuff, and I like those sort of changes. They add a lot of flavour, and you'll find that on page 32 of the PDF under classes. Now, let's move over and let's have a look at personality and background. Now, let's talk about this personality and background information. Now, we're going to focus on one very important thing straight away, inspiration, which is all about the character itself. At the beginning, when you roll them up, you gain personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. And if you roleplay to those, your GM may award you an inspiration token, for want of a better word, and that allows you to cash it in at some point, and you gain an advantage to that roll. And an advantage in this game, as I said in the previous video, is 2d20, taking the best one. So it's a really nice mechanic inspiration to reward the players for role-playing, which is always nice, and they gain an advantage to play to their flaws, their bonds, their ideals, and so forth. So I really like it. The other thing that comes out of this is that we then have some, I would call them sort of background ideals. So, for example, the acolyte being clerical, the criminal being thief-like, and so on. These may be expanded upon, but these are like particular to your character. It defines him quite a lot, actually. It's like a customizable background. Now, on the whole, they work quite well, and they give the character some interesting flavour. You know, if you play the acolyte, then there are certain places that you would have come from, a church, a temple, that you'll always be able to get respite at, you'll be able to gain things from, you'll be known, and so forth. I quite like that. It also gives you a few things that you would gain because of your association. They generally work very well, but one that really did puzzle me and doesn't quite work as well is the folk hero. The reason being that there are a number of things in it that are way above what a first level character probably could achieve. And a good example would be things like I broke into a tyrant's car. No, I led a militia to fight off an invading army, as an example. That's like impossible for a first level character to do, to be honest. I recruited into a lord's army, I rose to leadership, and was commended for my heroism. Again, it doesn't really fit the first level sort of build in my view, but I mean, again, with a tweak, it's fine. You have a folk hero ideal. I can see it working, but it has to be tweaked a little for my taste. But again, I thought I'd mention that in here. But on the whole, they're very good, those, and they work very well indeed. So let's next move into the next chapter, which is all about equipment. In the equipment section, the first thing I want to draw your attention to on the first page of it is page 42. Standard exchange rates are the traditional old coinage used in D&D. I would have liked to have seen that changed, actually, maybe over to a pure silver system. There's nothing stopping you doing it as a DM. It's just unfortunate it's the old system come back in, but I suppose if it's worked for this long, then why not carry it through? Just a shame it could have been tweaked and changed. On the very next page, on 44, we have a variant equipment sizes. I really like this rule. This is all about, for realism, when you find a piece of equipment and it has to be adapted for size. I really feel this section, it's highlighted, really encourages roleplay, really encourages travel, and is one of the ideals I would certainly recommend. Armour is interesting now because most armour, it can hinder stealthing, so you have to be quite careful what armour you choose. There are also certain dexterity modifier maximums depending on the army that you actually choose, which is a good thing, and certain big armours need high armour classes to actually carry and use, which is a very interesting change indeed. Weapons all have generally properties, and some of those properties give some very interesting options for the player characters to explore. I really do like them. For example, some weapons can be used with one hand or changed to two hands and gain an advantage. Some are light, some can be thrown, and light weapons now have interesting variation if you're using two weapon combinations, and some of the light weapons are very different than what I've been used to before. So you can actually move up into using things like two hand axes for two light weapons, which is kind of interesting. Really makes the cleric quite interesting as well, because it's a fairly simple weapon. So I really like that sort of thing, and that added a lot of flavour to me. There is on page 46 equipment packs. These can in some cases save money, so it's quite a good idea. I like this idea where, to save time, they've grouped together some key bits. So for example, the Dungeoneers pack, and it has a certain cost associated with it, and in some cases it's cheaper than that printed in the book. These are nice ideas to save time when working out what equipment you need. I quite like that. And that pretty much covers off what I wanted to look at, except this. There's a piece about herbalism kits where and about creating potions of healing, which sort of hints at the fact you can make antitoxins, potions of healings, poisons, various other things in there. And I guess those rules will come in the player's handbook. And there was a very nice piece at the end of this section which talks all about expenses and lifestyle choices and how much money it costs for you to live day by day. I really like that, making it very, very interesting. And also as well, it talks about spellcaster services and various things like that, so that you really do get the feeling of a character coming to life over a period of time. So all in all, big thumbs up from me there. It's rather a short section within the PDF. It's customise options. This is where you learn about multi-classing, the potential that this is going to come up, and it's been talked about primarily, by the looks of it, in the player's handbook. This will come up. There will be prerequisites required to meet the various classes you'd like to go into. But it also again hints at feats here and how feats will come into play. And we've already seen that hinted at in the earlier sections we've looked at. So that's really all I wanted to talk about here, because there isn't much I can actually grasp because it's not covered very much. It's only one page of the PDF, but it's important to mention it. And I'm sure you'll see these options come into their own in the player's handbook. Chapter 7 is all about playing the game. In this chapter we cover off the advantage and disadvantage mechanic, which I think we've already talked about quite enough. But we also look at ability checks. Anybody that's familiar with any 3rd edition products, Pathfinder, etc. will know how these really work. The GM will set a difficulty number and you roll against that. So an example might be you've got to get over 15. An ability check works by rolling a d20 and adding the relevant ability modifier. It's a very straightforward process. But as you'll see, it's quite hard. I like it. I think it's a good system and it's a nice change in the right direction. Coupling this, going alongside it, we have skills with different abilities. This is a variant rule. I like this rule. So a GM can call that depending on what skill is being used, it isn't actually, in this case, say for example, riding it might be strength based, but on this occasion, no, you're going to use dexterity. You're riding through a wood with a number of branches that could potentially take you off that horse. So the GM can make that call and you will roll accordingly. Again, a very, very nice touch. Those are the two parts of this chapter that really stood out to me. To come back for the final part tonight, we're going to talk about the adventuring piece. Little wrap up, very simply, there are 2 sections left to cover, which is magic and combat. 2 big sections that will require video all to themselves. Now, if you'd like to see that video, at the end of this video, you'll know what to do. And once I reach those 50 likes, I will be releasing that part as well. Anyway, I've been Sean Connors. This has been the Outsiders channel. I hope you've enjoyed my little jaunt into the PDF or the physical copy. Hopefully you printed your own one off. Anyway, take care of yourselves, happy gaming, and I look forward to seeing you soon on my channel. Bye-bye.